The first time Nora Whitaker saw a man die, Beethoven was still echoing from the practice room behind her. Rain slid down the windows of the private music academy in long silver lines, turning the Chicago street outside into a blur of headlights, umbrellas, and black pavement. Nora stood beneath the awning with a stack of beginner piano books pressed against her chest, waiting for the last parent to arrive. Her hands were cold, not because of the weather, but because for the past 20 minutes, a black Mercedes had been idling across the street with its lights off. Inside the school, a little boy named Luca Moretti had just finished playing the same 8 bars of Moonlight Sonata with a sadness no child should understand. His father was always there before the lesson ended, always dressed in dark suits, always silent, always watching from the hallway with the stillness of a statue carved from money and grief. He never made small talk, never checked his phone, never smiled. He simply waited, as if time obeyed him. But tonight, Matteo's father was late. Nora stepped out farther beneath the awning, glancing toward the corner where the Mercedes sat. The back door opened. A man stumbled out into the rain. At first, she thought he was drunk. Then she saw the blood blooming across his white shirt. He took 3 steps toward the academy, eyes wide with terror, mouth opening like he was trying to speak. Before Nora could move, another figure emerged from the shadows near the alley. A gun flashed beneath the streetlight. The sound was not loud like in movies. It was sharp, final. The wounded man collapsed onto the wet sidewalk. Nora froze. Her books slipped from her arms and scattered across the pavement. The killer turned his head. For one unbearable second, through the curtain of rain, he looked directly at her. Then a hand clamped over Nora's mouth from behind. She fought instantly, elbowing backward, but a hard arm locked around her waist and pulled her into the darkness beside the academy. Panic tore through her lungs. She tried to scream against his palm. A low voice brushed her ear. "Don't make a sound." She knew that voice. Matteo's father, Luca Moretti. He held her against the brick wall as footsteps splashed past the alley entrance. Nora could feel his body pressed behind hers, controlled and motionless, one hand over her mouth, the other holding something beneath his coat. A gun. She knew without seeing it. The killer paused near the alley. Nora stopped breathing. Luca did not. He was calm. Too calm. As if murder outside a children's music school was not an emergency but an inconvenience. The footsteps moved away. Only then did Luca slowly release her. Nora spun around, trembling. What was that? Luca's face remained unreadable beneath the shadows. Rain clung to his dark hair and the collar of his tailored coat. His eyes were almost black. "You saw his face," he said. "That man was murdered." "Yes. You say that like this happens every day." Luca looked past her toward the street, where the body lay half hidden by rain and headlights. "In my world," he said quietly, "it does." Nora stepped back. "Your world?" The back door of the academy opened, and Matteo appeared inside the warm light of the hallway, small hand gripping his music folder. His dark curls were damp from earlier rain, his face pale with confusion. "Papa." Something shifted in Luca's expression. Not softness, not exactly, but a crack in the iron. He moved immediately between his son and the alley, hiding the gun beneath his coat. "Go back inside, Matteo." The boy looked at Nora. "Miss Whitaker?" Nora's heart twisted. This child had played Mozart with careful fingers and asked if sad songs could still be beautiful. And now his father stood in an alley with blood on the sidewalk and a weapon under his coat. The world tilted. Luca turned back to Nora. "You're coming with me." She stared at him. "Absolutely not." His eyes sharpened. "You witnessed an execution carried out by a man who will not leave loose ends. I'm calling the police." "No, you're not." "Excuse me?" He stepped closer, his presence swallowing the narrow space between them. "The police will ask questions. Someone inside the department will hear your name. By morning, Victor Sokolov will know exactly where you live, where you teach, and how many locks are on your apartment door." Nora's throat tightened. "Who are you?" For the first time since she had met him 3 months ago, Luca Moretti looked at her, not as his son's piano teacher, not as a woman in a worn wool coat trying to rebuild her life, but as someone he had already decided belonged under his protection. "My name is Luca Moretti," he said. "And if you want to survive tonight, you will do exactly what I say." Nora had heard that name before. Everyone in Chicago had, not in newspapers, not directly. It lived in whispers between politicians, in restaurants where men lowered their voices, in old Italian neighborhoods where people looked away from black SUVs. Luca Moretti was not supposed to be real. He was a rumor with expensive shoes, a ghost behind unions, casinos, waterfront contracts, judges, murders that never became trials. And for 3 months, he had been sitting outside room 3 of her piano studio, listening to his son practice scales. Nora took another step back. "You're a criminal," his jaw tightened. "Tonight, I'm the only reason you're still breathing." Before she could answer, headlights swept across the alley. A black SUV stopped at the curb. 2 men stepped out, both armed, both looking at Luca with the silent obedience of soldiers. Nora's pulse thundered. "No, I am not getting into that car." Luca leaned closer, his voice calm enough to be terrifying. "You can hate me in the car." Then gunfire exploded against the academy windows. Glass shattered behind Matteo. Nora screamed. Luca moved like instinct. He grabbed her hand, pulled her toward the door, and shouted one word in Italian. His men returned fire. The street erupted into chaos, rain, bullets, tires screeching, Matteo crying from inside the hallway. Nora ran because Luca dragged her, because death had found her ordinary life and torn it open. Inside the academy, Luca swept Matteo into his arms with one hand, while keeping Nora behind him with the other. A bullet struck the framed poster beside her head. Splinters rained down. "Stay behind me," Luca ordered. For one insane second, Nora wanted to argue. Then she saw his face. Cold, focused, deadly. This was not a father anymore. This was the man Chicago feared. And he was shielding her with his body. They escaped through the back entrance into another SUV waiting in the alley. Luca shoved Nora inside first, then Matteo, then climbed in after them. The vehicle tore into the rain-soaked night. Matteo clung to Nora before she could think. His small arms wrapped around her waist, his face buried against her coat. He was shaking. Nora looked at Luca across the dark leather seat. His eyes were on his son. Not on the blood. Not on the men shouting through earpieces. Not on the gun in his hand. On Matteo. "Papa," Matteo whispered. "Is Miss Whittaker going to die?" Luca's gaze lifted to Nora. Something dangerous passed through his eyes. "No," he said. It was not reassurance. It was a vow. By midnight, Nora was no longer in the Chicago she knew. The SUV drove through streets she had walked 100 times, but they felt different behind tinted bulletproof glass. The city became a maze of wet lights and hidden watchers. They passed the conservatory where she had once been considered one of the most promising pianists in the Midwest, before one accusation destroyed everything. Before the board forced her resignation, before students stopped calling, before her name became something people said with pity. She had spent a year trying to disappear. Now the most dangerous man in Chicago had found her. The SUV entered an underground garage beneath a luxury building overlooking the river. Armed men stood near elevator doors. Cameras watched every angle. Luca carried Matteo, who had fallen asleep from shock, while Nora followed with her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "This is kidnapping," she said, though her voice trembled. Luca did not look back. "This is protection. I didn't ask for protection. You didn't ask to witness a murder either." They entered a private elevator. The doors closed silently. Nora stared at their reflections in the mirrored wall, herself pale and rain. Soaked, Luca composed with blood on one cuff, Matteo asleep against his shoulder like any beloved child after a long day. The contradiction made her dizzy. "How long have you been watching me?" she asked. Luca's eyes flicked to hers in the reflection. "Since before Matteo's first lesson." Her stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because I check anyone who gets close to my son." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you get tonight." The elevator opened into a penthouse that looked more like a private museum than a home. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the storm over Chicago. A black grand piano stood near the glass, polished so perfectly the city lights shimmered across its lid. Expensive art lined the walls. Nothing was warm except the child asleep in Luca's arms. A woman in her 60s appeared from the hallway, worry etched across her face. "Is he hurt?" she asked. "No," Luca said. "Get him settled." Matteo stirred. His fingers tightened around Nora's sleeve. "No," he mumbled. Miss Whitaker stays. The room went silent. Luca looked down at his son's hand, clutching Nora like she was the only safe thing left in the world. Nora gently touched Matteo's hair. I'm here. Luca's gaze moved to her fingers. Something unreadable hardened in him. The older woman took Matteo carefully, but the boy would not release Nora until she promised to sit outside his room. So Nora did. She sat in a hallway larger than her apartment, listening as the child cried himself to sleep behind a half-open door. Luca stood at the end of the hall, watching her. Not kindly, intensely, as if her presence had become a problem he could not solve with money or violence. When Matteo finally slept, Nora stood. I want to go home. No. You don't get to decide that. I already did. Her anger cut through the fear. I am not one of your employees. I am not one of your men. I am not some helpless woman you can lock in a tower because it makes you feel powerful. Luca stepped closer. You think this is about power? With men like you, everything is. His eyes darkened. Men like me keep women like you alive when decent men are still debating what is legal. Nora flinched. Not because he raised his voice, he didn't, but because the truth beneath it was uglier than she wanted. I had a life, she said. Luca glanced toward the sleeping child's room. So did the man outside the academy. Silence fell between them. Rain struck the windows. Nora hated him for being right. She hated herself more for noticing the exhaustion beneath his control. The way his hand flexed once at his side, as if he wanted to reach for something, and refused. Where am I supposed to sleep? She asked coldly. In the East guest room. And tomorrow? Tomorrow we find out who ordered the hit. And then I leave? Luca held her gaze. Then we decide whether leaving still keeps you alive. Nora laughed once, bitterly. You really are used to owning every room you enter. No, he said quietly. Only the dangerous ones. The East guest room overlooked the river. Nora did not sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed in borrowed silk pajamas, listening to the penthouse breathe around her, the distant voices of guards, the low hum of security systems, the storm pressing against the glass. At 3 a.m, she heard piano music, not from a speaker, from the living room. She stepped into the hallway barefoot. Luca sat at the grand piano in his shirt sleeves, tie removed, cuffs rolled back. The city glittered behind him. His hands rested on the keys, but the melody was broken, hesitant, familiar. Moonlight Sonata. The same piece Matteo had played that evening. Nora should have returned to her room. Instead, she stood in the shadows and listened. Luca played like a man who had learned grief by force. Not perfectly, not professionally, but with a restraint that made every wrong note feel painful. He stopped without turning. You're awake. You missed the F sharp, Nora said before she could stop herself. A pause. Then he looked over his shoulder. For the first time, something almost like amusement touched his mouth. Is that why you came out? To insult me? To correct you. Dangerous habit. So is kidnapping piano teachers. His almost smile disappeared. Nora walked closer, drawn despite herself. Who taught you? My wife. The word landed between them with more weight than she expected. Nora's gaze moved to the framed photograph on a side table. A beautiful dark-haired woman holding a baby Matteo, standing beside Luca in sunlight. He looked younger in the photo. Not softer, exactly, but less ruined. She died? Nora asked gently. Luca's face closed. She was taken. The room chilled. By who? His hand lowered over the keys, pressing one note so softly it barely sounded. That is not a story for tonight. Nora understood then that Matteo was not just attached to her because she taught him music. He was attached because music was the ghost of his mother. And Luca Moretti, for all his power, had no idea how to give that back to him. You should let him keep playing, Nora said. I do. No. You let him take lessons. That's not the same thing. His eyes narrowed. She should have stopped. But compassion had always been the part of her that survived every humiliation. He plays like he's afraid of making you sad, she said. He watches your face after every mistake. He doesn't need a perfect father standing outside the room like a guard. He needs one who can sit beside him when the song hurts. Luca rose slowly. The air changed. Men probably begged when Luca Moretti stood that way. Nora forced herself not to move. You know nothing about my son. I know he cried tonight and asked if I was going to die before he asked if he was safe. Luca's expression flickered. He's lonely, Nora said softer. And so are you. The silence that followed was dangerous. Luca crossed the distance between them until Nora could see the faint scar near his jaw, the shadow under his eyes, the control holding him together by threads. "Do not confuse access with intimacy," he said. Her breath caught. "I let you into this home because you are in danger. I let you near my son because he trusts you. But do not stand in my house and pretend you can read me because you heard one unfinished song." Nora lifted her chin. "Then stop playing like a man begging a ghost to answer." For a heartbeat, she thought he might explode. Instead, he leaned closer. His voice dropped. "You should be more careful with me, Nora." It was the first time he had used her first name. It sounded like a warning. It felt like a touch. The next morning, Nora's old life vanished by sunrise. Her apartment had been broken into. Luca showed her the security footage on a wall-sized screen in his private office. Two men moving through her small space with flashlights. Her sheet music dumped across the floor. Her closet torn apart. Her mattress sliced open. One man paused at her piano, touched the keys, then looked directly into the hidden camera Luca's people had installed sometime after midnight. Nora turned slowly toward him. "You put cameras in my apartment? After the shooting? That was hours ago." "Yes. You had people inside my home while I was asleep? You were alive when you woke up." She slapped him. The room went silent. The guards near the door looked away instantly. Luca's face turned slightly from the force. When he looked back, his eyes were colder than winter over the lake. Nora's hand shook. "You don't get to violate my life and call it protection." Luca dismissed the guards with one look. The door closed. Only then did he speak. "You're right." Nora froze. He stepped back, giving her space. "I violated your privacy." The apology should have softened something. It didn't. Not fully. "Why were they searching my apartment?" she asked. "Because they think you have something. I don't. They believe the man killed outside the academy gave you something before he died. He didn't even reach me." Luca studied the footage again. "Then maybe they think he came to you for a reason." "That's impossible." "Is it?" Nora looked at him sharply. Luca opened a file on his desk and turned it toward her. Her own photograph stared back. Not recent. A conservatory press photo from 2 years ago. Nora in a black dress, seated at a Steinway, smiling like the future had not yet betrayed her. Below it were documents. Her resignation. The accusation. The scandal. Nora's chest tightened. "Why do you have this?" "I told you. I check anyone near my son." "You investigated the worst thing that ever happened to me?" "Yes." Her voice lowered. "Then you know I didn't do it." "Lukas Hase held hers." "I know." Those 2 words hit harder than she expected. For a year, people had doubted her politely. Former colleagues avoided eye contact. Parents withdrew students. The conservatory board said there had been financial irregularities connected to a scholarship fund under her supervision. Nora had been young, newly promoted, easy to sacrifice. No charges, no trial, just suspicion strong enough to ruin her. No one powerful had ever said, "I know." She looked away before he could see her eyes fill. Luca noticed anyway. "Who framed you?" he asked. "I don't know. I think you do." Nora swallowed. "Julian Vale, the dean's son. He was handling donor transfers. I questioned missing funds. A week later, my access codes appeared on the fraudulent withdrawals." Luca's expression did not change, but something lethal entered the room. "Julian Vale works with Sokolov," he said. Nora went still. "Viktor Sokolov?" "Yes." "The rival you mentioned?" Luca nodded. "Julian used the conservatory to move money through arts foundations. The man killed last night was my accountant. He was trying to deliver proof that Sokolov stole from a trust tied to Mateo's inheritance." Nora's pulse stumbled. "Mateo's inheritance?" Luca's jaw tightened. "My wife's family left assets to my son. Legal ownership transfers when Mateo turns 10. How old is he?" 9. The pieces began to shift into a darker shape. "So Sokolov wants the inheritance. He wants what comes with it." "Which is?" Luca looked out at the storm-gray city. The Moretti shipping routes, the lakefront properties, the political names attached to them, enough power to turn Chicago into a graveyard. Nora's voice thinned. "And somehow I'm connected because of the conservatory, because the stolen money, Mateo's trust, and your scandal all run through the same foundation." The room seemed to tilt. Nora had spent a year thinking she had been ruined by greed. Now she understood she had been collateral damage in a mafia war. Luca came around the desk, but stopped before getting too close. I need you to remember everything about Julian Vale. Why? Because if you help me find what my accountant died trying to deliver, I can clear your name. Nora looked up. Hope was cruel when it returned too quickly. And if I refuse? Luca's eyes darkened. Then I still protect you. Why? The question left her before she could stop it. He was silent too long. Then he said, because my son would never forgive me if I let you die. It should have been comforting. Instead, something in Nora's chest tightened with disappointment she had no right to feel. Because for one foolish second, she had wanted him to say, because of her. By the third day, the city believed Nora Whitaker was Luca Moretti's lover. It started with a photograph. A grainy image taken outside his building. Luca's hand at Nora's lower back as he guided her into a black SUV, his coat partially shielding her from rain. Matteo's face hidden against her side. By morning, gossip accounts had turned it into a scandal. Disgraced conservatory pianist linked to Mafia King. The headline spread faster than truth ever had. Nora stared at the article on Luca's tablet, horrified. This ruins me again. Luca stood beside the window, dressed for war in a charcoal suit. It also makes you harder to touch. She looked at him. You planned this. I allowed it. That's the same thing. No. If I planned it, the photo would have been better. Her eyes flashed. This is my life, and someone is trying to end it. You don't get to use my reputation as armor. Luca turned toward her. Your reputation was already being used as a weapon. I'm changing who it wounds. Before Nora could answer, Matteo walked into the room holding his music book. He looked from Nora to Luca. Are people saying bad things about Miss Whitaker? Nora's anger dissolved. Luca crouched before his son, his powerful frame folding into something carefully gentle. People say things when they don't understand. Matteo frowned. Like when they said Mama ran away. Nora's heart stopped. Luca went very still. The child's voice grew small. But she didn't, right? Luca's face was controlled, but Nora saw the pain move through him like a blade. No, he said. She didn't. Matteo looked at Nora. People lie when they want to hurt you. Nora knelt beside him. Yes, they do. Then you can stay with us until they stop. The innocence of it nearly broke her. Luca stood, unable or unwilling to watch his son attach another thread to her. But it was already happening. Matteo began seeking her out every morning. He practiced scales in the penthouse living room, while armed guards stood near the elevator. He asked Nora to show him how to play without fear. He left drawings outside her door. A piano, 3 stick figures, 1 black SUV. In every drawing, Luca stood slightly apart. One afternoon, while snow began falling over the river, Matteo asked, Do you think Papa is lonely? Nora glanced toward Luca's office door. Yes, she said carefully. Can lonely people be dangerous? Nora thought of Luca's eyes in the alley, his hand over her mouth, his body between her and bullets. Yes. Can dangerous people love someone? Her throat tightened. Yes, Matteo. But sometimes they don't know how. That evening, Luca found her in the music room, looking at one of Matteo's drawings. You're getting too close to him, he said. Nora turned. He's a child. He's my child. And he needs more than guards and silence. He needs to survive. He needs to live. Luca's expression hardened. You think I don't know that? I think you're so afraid of losing him that you're teaching him love is another locked room. His eyes flashed. You are in my home because death followed you here, he said. Do not mistake temporary shelter for family. The words struck deeper than he intended. Nora folded the drawing carefully and set it down. You're right, she said. I'm not family. She walked past him. This time, he reached for her. His hand caught her wrist not harshly, but firmly enough to stop her. The contact sparked through both of them. His thumb rested over her pulse. Nora looked down, then up. Luca's face changed by fractions. He felt it. So did she. For a moment, the room held only their breathing and the quiet fall of snow beyond the glass. Then he released her, as if touching her had burned him. Nora. No, she whispered. You don't get to push me away and say my name like that. She left before he could answer. That night, Luca sat outside her guest room door. Nora discovered him just after midnight when she opened it, unable to sleep. He was in the hallway, sitting in a chair that had not been there before, coat off, gun resting on his thigh. Her breath caught. "What are you doing? Your window sensor malfunctioned. So you decided to guard me personally?" "Yes. That's absurd. Probably." She studied him. The great Luca Moretti, feared by judges and killers, sitting outside her door like a man who had lost the right to sleep. Rain had returned, tapping the windows at the end of the hall. "You have guards," she said. "I trust them with my life, but not mine." His eyes lifted. The silence answered before he did. Nora's heart beat harder. "Luca, go back to sleep." But she didn't move. For the first time, his control seemed less like power and more like punishment. "You told me not to mistake this for family," she said quietly. His jaw flexed. "I said it because Matteo is already asking what happens when you leave." "And what did you tell him?" "That everyone leaves." The pain in his voice was buried so deep another person might have missed it. Nora didn't. She stepped into the hallway. Luca stood immediately, as if proximity to her required defense. "He's 9, she whispered. "Don't make him inherit your grief." Something broke in his eyes. Not visibly, not dramatically, just enough. "I buried his mother in a closed casket," Luca said. "Do you know what that does to a boy?" Nora's throat tightened. "I told him she was gone. I never told him how. I never told him I found her wedding ring in an envelope on my desk." Nora's voice shook. "Sokolov?" "Yes." "And you never avenged her?" His eyes turned almost black. "I killed 18 men in 3 days." Nora went cold. "Not him," Luca said. "He disappeared behind politicians, banks, charities, men with clean hands and dirty souls. So I waited. I built. I became worse than the thing that took her." The confession hung in the hallway like smoke. Nora should have stepped back. Instead, she moved closer. "Is that why you scare everyone away?" "Yes. Even Matteo." His silence was unbearable. Nora touched his hand. Just his hand. Luca looked down at her fingers as if they were the most dangerous thing in his life. "You should not touch me," he said. "Why?" "Because I will want more." The words were quiet, devastating. Nora's breath caught. Luca turned his hand beneath hers, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers closed around hers. For one suspended second, the entire penthouse seemed to disappear, the guards, the blood, the scandal, the city waiting to devour them. Then a phone rang. Luca's expression changed instantly. He answered, listened, and whatever tenderness had almost lived between them died beneath the cold return of the Mafia Boss. "Where?" he asked. "A pause." Then his gaze moved to Nora. "No, keep him alive until I get there." He ended the call. "What happened?" Nora asked. Luca slipped the gun into his waistband. "We found Julian Vale." Julian Vale was being held beneath an abandoned theater on the south side. Nora should not have gone. Luca told her that 3 times. She went anyway, because Julian was the man who had destroyed her life, and she refused to let Luca speak for her in the room where her name might finally be returned. The theater smelled of dust, velvet, and old ghosts. Broken chandeliers hung above rows of ruined seats. Luca's men moved through shadows. Snow melted from Nora's coat as Luca guided her down a narrow staircase beneath the stage. "You stay behind me," he said. "I'm noticing a theme. I'm serious." "So am I." He stopped before the basement door. "Julian is not the boy you remember from faculty dinners. He moves money for murderers now." Nora's voice hardened. "He was always a coward with expensive manners." Luca looked at her for a moment, then opened the door. Julian Vale sat tied to a metal chair beneath a single hanging light. His blonde hair was disheveled, his face bruised, but when he saw Nora, he smiled like they were meeting at a gala. "Nora," he said. "Still landing in scandal, I see." Luca moved so fast Julian's chair nearly tipped backward. He gripped Julian's jaw. "Speak to her with respect." Julian laughed through blood. "Of course. Forgive me. I forgot she has a new patron." Nora stepped forward before Luca could do worse. "Why did you frame me?" Julian's eyes flicked to Luca, then back to her. "Because you were honest. Honest people are so easy to ruin. They keep expecting truth to matter." Nora's hands curled into fists. "You stole scholarship money. I moved it. For Sokolo." Julian smiled. "Among others." Luca's voice was low. "Where is the ledger?" Julian's smile faded. Nora noticed. What ledger? She asked. Julian looked at her with sudden interest. He hasn't told you. Luca went still. Julian leaned back. How romantic. The crime lord and the piano teacher, both keeping secrets. Nora turned to Luca. What is he talking about? Luca did not answer. Julian's eyes glittered. The accountant didn't just die for Matteo's inheritance. He died because Luca's dead wife left behind proof that half of Chicago's elite used the Moretti Foundation to hide blood money. Judges, police chiefs, conservatory donors. Nora's pulse roared. Julian looked directly at her. Including the donor who demanded your removal. Nora whispered. Why? Because Elena Moretti trusted you. The name struck the room silent. Luca's wife. Nora shook her head. I never met her. Julian smiled. No, but she heard you play. Luca's face was unreadable. But Nora felt the shift in him. Julian continued, cruelly pleased. Elena attended your final recital before she died. She told Luca you played grief like someone who had survived it. She wanted you for Matteo someday, not because of skill, because of heart. Nora looked at Luca. He looked away. You knew? She asked. Luca's silence was answer enough. The betrayal was small compared to murder, but it cut deeper than it should have. You didn't choose me randomly, Nora said. No. You let me believe I was just his teacher. You are his teacher, but that's not how this started. Julian laughed softly. Oh, Nora. Men like Luca never let fate do what surveillance can. Luca struck him. The chair crashed sideways. Nora flinched. Luca's breathing remained controlled, but his eyes were lethal. Enough. Julian spat blood onto the concrete. Sokolov has the ledger copy, but not the original. Luca stepped closer. Julian looked at Nora. She has it. Nora recoiled. What? Julian smiled again. The dead accountant slipped it somewhere she would never notice. Sheet music, perhaps? Piano books? Something innocent. Nora remembered the books falling from her arms into the rain. Her apartment torn apart. Her studio shot to pieces. Luca turned to one of his men. Search everything taken from the academy. Julian's gaze sharpened. Too late. The lights went out. For 1 second, darkness swallowed everything. Then gunfire erupted. Luca grabbed Nora and threw her behind a concrete pillar as bullets tore through the basement. Men shouted. Glass shattered upstairs. The theater filled with the thunder of an ambush. Sokolov had found them. Nora crouched behind Luca as he returned fire with terrifying precision. His body shielded hers. One hand pushed her back every time she tried to move. Stay down. Julian screamed in the chaos. Then silence cracked open with a new sound. A child's voice over the basement speakers. Papa? Luca froze. Nora's blood turned to ice. Matteo. His voice trembled through the old theater sound system. Papa. They said Miss Whitaker has to come outside. Luca's face changed into something Nora had never seen. Pure fear. A man could rule a city and still be destroyed by one child's voice. Sokolov's voice followed, smooth and accented. Luca Moretti. Bring me the woman, or I send your son back to you piece by piece. Nora grabbed Luca's arm. No. His eyes were already deadening, turning into the kind of cold that preceded massacres. No, she repeated. Don't become what he wants. He has my son. He wants me, and he will not have you. The force of it stole her breath. Another speaker crackled. You have 2 minutes. Luca looked at Nora. Every emotion he had denied was suddenly there. Terror, rage, desperation, possession, and something deeper than any word either of them was ready to say. I can get close, Nora whispered. He won't kill me immediately if he thinks I know where the ledger is. No. Luca? No. It's Matteo. His jaw clenched, as if her saying his son's name hurt. I said no. Nora stepped closer, ignoring the bullets still cracking above them. You cannot protect both of us by controlling everything. His voice dropped. Watch me. Then he turned to his men and began issuing orders so ruthless and precise that Nora understood why Chicago whispered his name like a prayer and a curse. The rescue happened in 7 minutes. 7 minutes of darkness, smoke, and violence. Luca's men cut power to 3 city blocks. A sniper took out the theater's exterior lights. 2 SUVs crashed through the alley barricade. Nora stayed hidden in the basement with 1 guard, until she heard Matteo scream. Then she ran. She found him on the stage above, held by a masked man with a gun pressed near his head. Sokolov stood in the ruined balcony, elegant in a pale coat, watching like a director admiring his own tragedy. Nora Whitaker, he called. The woman who keeps surviving men's mistakes. The masked man tightened his grip on Matteo. Nora stepped into the aisle, hands raised. Matteo sobbed. "Miss Whitaker, I'm here," she said, voice shaking but clear. "Look at me, not him." Sokolov smiled. "How touching." The dead wife picked well. Nora's eyes lifted. "You killed Elena." The balcony fell silent. Sokolov tilted his head. "Luca told you that. He didn't have to." "No, I did not kill Elena Moretti." His smile thinned. Her own blood did. Before Nora could understand, Luca appeared behind the masked man like a shadow with a gun. The shot was clean. The man dropped. Matteo ran. Nora caught him, pulling him to the floor as bullets exploded from the balcony. Luca moved in front of them, firing upward, his white shirt blooming red at the shoulder. Nora screamed his name. He didn't fall. He advanced. Sokolov vanished through a side door. By the time the theater went silent, Luca was bleeding, Matteo was sobbing, and Nora was holding both of them on the dusty stage beneath a broken chandelier. For one breathless moment, they looked like a ruined family portrait. Luca touched Matteo's face first, then Nora's. His bloody fingers hovered near her cheek, stopping before contact. "You're hurt," she whispered. "I've had worse." Her eyes filled with furious tears. "Don't say that like it makes this acceptable." He stared at her, and the restraint between them finally began to fracture. Matteo clung to him. "Papa, please don't die." Luca closed his eyes. Nora saw it then. He was not afraid of death. He was afraid of leaving love behind unprotected. The ledger was found the next morning inside Nora's most ordinary beginner piano book. A hollow had been cut into the cardboard backing. Inside was a small encrypted drive and a folded letter addressed to Luca. The accountant must have slipped it there in the rain after he fell, before dying beneath the academy lights. Luca read the letter alone. Then he disappeared for 6 hours. When he returned, he was not the same. Nora found him in his office, standing before the window as snow turned the city white. His injured shoulder was bandaged beneath a black shirt. On his desk lay photographs, legal documents, old foundation records, and one image that made Nora's stomach twist. Elena Moretti standing beside a man Nora recognized from conservatory donor galas. Adrian Bellamy, Elena's brother. Lucas spoke without turning. Sokolov told the truth. Nora stepped closer. "About Elena, my brother-in-law betrayed her." The words were almost emotionless. That made them worse. He sold information about her movements to Sokolov. He thought she was only going to be threatened. He wanted control of the family trust. Instead, they took her. When he realized she was dead, he helped bury the evidence. Nora looked at the documents. "And he's connected to the conservatory. He chaired the foundation that destroyed you." The room spun with the cruelty of it. Elena's brother had helped kill her, stolen from Matteo, framed Nora, and left Luca hunting the wrong monster for years. "Where is he now?" Nora asked. Luca's silence answered. Fear moved through her. "What are you going to do? What should have been done years ago?" "Luca." He finally turned. There was no warmth in him now, no hesitation. Only the Mafia Boss, sharpened by grief. "You wanted truth," he said. "This is what truth costs in my world." "No," Nora whispered. "Revenge costs this." His eyes flashed. "He helped murder my wife, and if you kill him like this, he takes another piece of you." Luca laughed once, without humor. "You think there are pieces left?" "Yes." That stopped him. Nora crossed the room, heart pounding. "I've seen them. With Matteo. At the piano. Outside my door at midnight. In the way you say my name when you forget. You're supposed to be cruel." His jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking you not to become empty. I am not a good man, Nora. I know. I have killed men. I know. I would burn this city to keep you and Matteo safe." Her breath caught. There it was. Not love, not yet. Something darker. More dangerous. A confession shaped like a threat. "You can't say things like that," she whispered. He tried not to. He moved closer, and this time, he did not stop at a safe distance. "I tried to keep you outside it. I tried to make you temporary. I tried to convince myself you were here because of Matteo. His hand lifted slowly. Nora did not move. His fingers brushed her cheek with unbearable restraint. But every time danger came near you, he said, voice roughening, something in me stopped caring what the world would cost. Nora's eyes burned. And that scares you? His thumb traced the edge of her jaw. No, he said. What scares me is that it doesn't. For a moment, neither breathed. Then Nora stepped back. Pain flashed through his eyes before he hid it. I can't be another thing you possess because you're afraid to lose it, she said. Luca's hand fell. I know. I need a choice. You have one. Do I? His voice lowered. Yes. And I will hate it if you choose to leave. The honesty broke something in her. Before she could answer, Matteo appeared in the doorway, pale and silent. I don't want Miss Whitaker to leave, he said. Nora turned. The boy's eyes were red from crying. I know, she whispered. He looked at his father. You scare everyone away. Luca flinched as if struck. Matteo stepped inside. Mama left because someone took her. Miss Whitaker will leave because you make her. The room went painfully still. Luca crouched, despite the wound in his shoulder. Matteo. No. The boy's voice cracked. You always say you're protecting me, but you don't let anyone stay close enough to love us. Nora covered her mouth. Luca looked like his son had handed him the truth and a knife at the same time. Matteo ran to Nora, wrapping his arms around her. She held him. Across the room, Luca watched them with a devastation no enemy had ever managed to put on his face. That night, Nora packed. Not because she wanted to leave, because staying without choosing would destroy her. Luca did not stop her. He stood in the doorway of the guest room while she folded the few clothes his staff had bought for her. Outside, snow fell over Chicago in thick, silent sheets. I can place you somewhere safe, he said. New name, new city, money. Nora laughed softly, sadly. You still think safety is a location? His face tightened. She closed the suitcase. I spent a year hiding after the conservatory. It didn't heal me. It just made my life smaller. Then what do you want? I want my name cleared. I want Matteo safe. I want the people who did this exposed in a way they can't buy their way out of. And me? The question was so quiet she almost missed it. Nora looked up. Luca stood perfectly still, but his eyes betrayed him. What do you want from me? He asked. She could have said nothing. It would have been safer. Instead, she crossed the room and stopped in front of him. I want the man who sat outside my door because he couldn't sleep while I was in danger, she said. I want the father who kept every piece of his wife's music because he didn't know how to grieve. I want the man who looks at me like he's 1 second away from losing control, but still waits because he knows I deserve a choice. His breathing changed, but I don't want the king who thinks love is another empire. Luca's eyes closed briefly. When he opened them, the cold was gone, not softened, stripped. What if I don't know how to be anything else? Nora touched his chest, directly over his heart. Then learn. For the first time, Luca Moretti looked helpless. Not weak, never weak, but unarmed. He lowered his forehead until it almost touched hers. Almost. The almost hurt more than a kiss. I should let you go, he whispered. Yes, I won't survive it well. I know. His hand rose to her waist, then stopped, trembling with restraint. Nora. She closed her eyes at the sound of her name. Then the penthouse alarms screamed. The windows exploded inward. A helicopter's searchlight flooded the room white. Luca moved instantly, throwing Nora to the floor beneath him as bullets tore through the walls. His body covered hers, heavy and warm, one arm locked around her head. Matteo, Nora screamed. Luca was already dragging her up. Smoke filled the hallway. Guards shouted. Fire burst from the living room curtains. Through the chaos, Nora saw men descending from the rooftop access. Not Sokolov's men. Bellamy's. Clean suits. Private security. Men who belonged to boardrooms, not alleys. That made them worse. They reached Matteo's room at the same time as 2 attackers. Luca killed one before Nora could blink. The other grabbed Matteo. Nora seized the nearest object, a bronze music stand, and swung with every ounce of terror in her body. It struck the man across the face. He dropped Matteo with a curse. Luca finished him. Matteo ran into Nora's arms. The penthouse burned behind them. Luca's men pushed them toward a private stairwell, but the exit below was blocked. Smoke crawled through the corridor. The only way out was up, to the rooftop helipad. Snow and ash whipped around them as they emerged into the freezing night. Chicago glittered below, indifferent and beautiful. A black helicopter waited on the pad, blades spinning. Then Adrian Bellamy stepped from behind it with a gun. He was silver-haired, elegant, the kind of man who looked at home in charity ballrooms and courtrooms. Nora recognized him instantly. He had once shaken her hand at the conservatory and told her the arts needed women with integrity. Now he pointed a gun at Matteo. Luca stopped. Every guard froze. Bellamy smiled. "Hello, brother." Luca's voice was deadly calm. "You don't deserve that word." "No, I suppose not." Matteo clung to Nora's coat. Bellamy's eyes moved over the child with cold calculation. Elena always was sentimental, leaving everything to a boy. Luca stepped forward. Bellamy raised the gun. Another step, and sentiment ends here. Nora's blood turned to ice. Bellamy looked at her. "And you, the pianist. You were such an irritating little loose thread." "You framed me," Nora said. "I corrected a problem. You destroyed my life." He smiled. "And yet here you are, standing beside the most dangerous man in Chicago. Perhaps I improved it." Luca's men shifted. Bellamy's private guards aimed their weapons. The rooftop became a frozen chessboard. Then Bellamy said the words that shattered everything. "Elena found the ledger because she was planning to leave you, Luca." Luca went still. Nora looked at him. Bellamy's smile widened. "You didn't know? She wanted Matteo away from your world. She was gathering evidence to trade for protection." "That's a lie," Luca said. "Is it? Ask yourself why she chose a piano teacher for your son before she died. Ask yourself why she hid documents from you. She feared what you would make him." The snow fell harder. For one horrible moment, Luca looked wounded in a place no weapon could reach. Bellamy used it. He fired. Nora moved before thinking. The bullet struck her side instead of Matteo. Pain exploded white-hot through her body. Luca's roar tore through the rooftop. She collapsed, Matteo screaming her name. The world blurred snow, blood, city lights, Luca catching her before she hit the ground. Then violence erupted. Luca held Nora with one arm and fired with the other. His face transformed into something ancient and merciless. His men surged forward. Bellamy's guards fell. The helicopter lights swung wildly across the rooftop. Nora heard Matteo crying. She heard Luca saying her name, over and over, like a prayer he did not believe he deserved. Bellamy tried to run. Luca laid Nora carefully into Matteo's arms for 1 second. "Hold her hand," he told his son. Then he walked toward Bellamy. Nora tried to speak. "Luca, don't." But her voice was too weak. Bellamy slipped on the snow near the edge of the roof. Luca caught him by the collar and dragged him back. For a moment, Nora thought he would kill him. Every man on that roof thought he would kill him. Bellamy did too. Luca pressed the gun beneath his chin. "You took my wife," he said. Bellamy shook. "Luca, you tried to take my son. Please." Luca's eyes flicked back to Nora, bleeding in the snow, Matteo holding her hand with both of his. Something changed. Not mercy. Choice. Luca lowered the gun. "No," he said. "You don't get to die clean." Police sirens wailed far below. Nora later learned Luca had leaked the ledger to every federal office, newspaper, and judge not owned by Bellamy. By dawn, Adrian Bellamy was arrested on a rooftop with blood on his shoes, stolen trust documents in his accounts, and enough evidence to destroy half of Chicago's respectable monsters. But Nora remembered only fragments. Luca carrying her into the helicopter, his shirt soaked with her blood. Matteo sobbing against her shoulder, the city falling away beneath them, and Luca's voice near her ear. "Stay with me." For once, it was not a command. It was a plea. Nora woke in a private hospital suite overlooking Lake Michigan. Machines beeped softly beside her. Morning light silvered the water. Her side burned when she breathed, but she was alive. Luca sat beside her bed, unshaven, sleepless, still in the same blood-stained shirt beneath a black coat. Matteo slept curled in a chair near the window, wrapped in a blanket, one hand clutching Nora's old beginner piano book. Nora turned her head. Luca's eyes opened instantly. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped like he was holding himself together. You were told not to move, he said, her lips curved faintly. Nice to see you too. His expression cracked. Just slightly. But enough. You almost died. I noticed. His jaw tightened. Do not joke. I'm not very good at obedience. No, he said, voice rough. You're not. Silence settled between them. This silence was different. Not filled with secrets. Filled with everything they had survived. Nora looked toward Matteo. He stayed? He refused to leave. And you? Luca's eyes returned to her. I couldn't. Her heart ached. He reached into his coat and removed a folded newspaper. He placed it gently on the bed. Nora read the headline. Former conservatory pianist, exonerated in foundation fraud scandal. Below it was her name. Cleared. Vindicated. Returned to herself. Tears blurred her vision. Luca watched without touching her. Because now, he understood the difference between protection and possession. They want to offer you your position back, he said. Nora laughed through tears. Of course they do. You don't have to decide now. She looked at him. You're not going to decide for me. A shadow of a smile touched his mouth. I'm learning. Her tears fell harder. Luca's expression tightened as if her crying physically hurt him. Nora. She held out her hand. He stared at it, then took it carefully. Like a man touching something sacred after years of blood. His thumb moved over her knuckles. I need to tell you something, he said. That sounds ominous. It is. She waited. Elena did want Matteo away from parts of my world, he said. Bellamy twisted the truth, but not all of it. She feared what power would do to him. To me. Nora listened. She chose you because she heard you play after losing your father. She said anyone who could make grief sound beautiful might teach our son how to survive ours. Nora's throat tightened. I didn't bring Matteo to you because I trusted her wish, Luca said. At first, I brought him because I wanted to understand why she had chosen you. And then? His eyes held hers. Then I understood. Matteo stirred near the window. Luca looked at his son, and this time, Nora saw no locked room in his face. Only fear. Only love. Only a man trying to become less ruined before his child learned ruin as a language. 2 months later, Nora returned to the academy, not the conservatory. She declined their offer with a letter so graceful it hurt them more than anger could have. Instead, she reopened the small, private music school under her own name, Whitaker House of Music. The front windows were new, the floors refinished, the old practice rooms repainted in warm cream and gold. Parents whispered, of course. People always whispered. But now they whispered differently. Some said Nora Whitaker had brought down a criminal conspiracy. Some said she was protected by Luca Moretti. Some said she had become his weakness. They were all partly right. On the first evening of lessons, rain fell softly over Chicago. Nora stood inside room 3, listening as Matteo played Moonlight Sonata from beginning to end without stopping. Not perfectly, but bravely. Luca waited outside the door, still in a dark suit. Still quiet. Still dangerous, but not as distant. When Matteo finished, he looked toward the hallway. Luca stepped inside. The boy's shoulders tensed with old habit. Then Luca sat beside him on the piano bench. Nora watched from across the room, her heart aching. Luca placed his large hand over Matteo's small one and pressed a single key. Wrong note. Matteo looked horrified. Nora laughed softly. Luca glanced at her. Was that incorrect? Catastrophically. Matteo giggled. The sound changed the room. Later, when Matteo ran to show his grandmother a sticker Nora had given him, Luca remained by the piano. Rain blurred the windows behind him. You're staring, Nora said. Yes. At what? He stood and crossed the room slowly. At the woman who walked into my world and made it impossible to remain alone. Nora's breath caught. Luca, I love you, he said. No warning, no decoration, no escape. The words entered the room with the same quiet force as everything about him. Nora stared at him. He did not move closer, did not touch her, did not demand. I know I have no right to say it. He continued. I know love from me is not simple. It comes with enemies, locked doors, ghosts, and men who still think my heart is a place they can strike. His voice lowered. But it is yours if you want it. Not as a cage, not as a debt. Not because Matteo loves you, because I do. Nora's eyes filled. Outside, headlights reflected in the wet street. A black SUV waited at the curb, but for once, it did not look like a threat. It looked like a promise someone dangerous was trying to make gently. Nora stepped closer. "You terrify me," she whispered. "I know. You frustrate me. I know. You still think glaring solves emotional problems." His mouth softened. "It often solves other problems." She smiled through tears. Then she touched his face. This time, he did not warn her. This time, he leaned into her hand like a man who had survived war and found home in the one place he had not conquered. "I love you too," she said. Luca closed his eyes. The great Mafia Boss of Chicago looked undone by 5 words. When he kissed her, it was not soft. It was restrained power finally surrendering. It was rain against windows, music still trembling in the air, grief loosening its grip one breath at a time. His hand slid to her waist, careful of the scar beneath her dress. Hers moved to his chest, feeling the hard, steady beat of a heart the city had believed did not exist. From the hallway, Matteo groaned. "Are you kissing?" Nora pulled back, laughing. Luca did not look remotely apologetic. "Yes," he said. Matteo made a face. "That's disgusting." Then he smiled. A real smile. The kind children make when the world feels safe enough to be ordinary. Months later, people would still tell stories about Luca Moretti, that he had destroyed a rival empire without starting a war, that he had handed federal agents enough evidence to bury politicians, judges, and men who thought wealth made them untouchable, that he still ruled Chicago from behind closed doors, colder than ever to those who crossed him. But there were other stories too, quieter ones. A black SUV parked every Thursday outside Whitaker House of Music. A feared man sitting in the back row at children's recitals. A boy playing his mother's favorite song while his father listened without looking away. A woman in a black dress standing beneath stage lights, her name restored, her heart no longer hiding. And sometimes, after the school closed and rain softened the city, Nora would find Luca waiting in room 3 beside the piano. He would never ask her to play. He didn't have to. She would sit beside him, and together they would fill the silence with music. Not because the past had vanished. It never did. But because love had entered the room where grief used to live. And Luca Moretti, the man who had once hidden in plain sight as a piano student's father, no longer waited outside the door. He came in.